Welcome back. It is now a beautiful July 11th out here, absolutely full of mosquitoes. A lot of these cereal crops now are really into the flowering stage. This durum, dryland durum, is flowering, although it does have multiple stages in here from its emergence issues earlier in the season. But it's looking not too bad now, and we certainly have lots of flowering canola to look at this week. Well, last week the headlands of this barley field were just being absolutely overrun by grasshoppers, so we came in, we sprayed Coragen, just a single pass along the headlands. Really seemed to clean them up. There's a pasture on the other side of the road right there that they're all coming out of. And now the ground is just littered with these little guys. So we should be able to keep them under control here for several weeks, get control of that flush before it even gets into the field. Here in this winter wheat, you can see we have a little bit of cereal leaf beetle feeding. It's few and far between. It's definitely nothing to really worry about, but it is something you see every year. It looks like a little lawnmower tracks down the leaves. There is a fair amount of disease in here. There's now powdery mildew down at the bottom, which is very common to see in thick irrigated winter wheat. We also have quite a bit of tan spots starting to develop about halfway up the canopy, but for the most part, flag leaves are still pretty clean. And these heads are basically just starting to fill, so a lot of these guys now are just starting to enter into the milk stage with just a little bit of moisture in them here now. So over the next week or so, we'll see these heads rapidly start to fill out. Yellow peas in Nobleford Barrens area are looking really good this week. We are still in full flower, setting lots of pods. So things are looking very promising here, certainly better than last year's crop. Oh, there is a bit more corn yellow top starting to show up in fields now that we are getting into warmer, sunnier weather, and it's starting to grow faster. There's a couple over here. Here's another dramatic one here. This will kind of self-correct in a few days. You can kind of see those characteristic wrinkles on the leaf here, and that is basically the plant version of the human growing pains you probably got in your legs as a teenager. It's just growing so fast that it's kind of wrinkling up, and it's yellow because it's just not producing chlorophyll fast enough. But that'll clear up in a few days. This week we're supposed to be in the 30s for high temperatures, so this corn is going to grow real fast. It just absolutely loves hot weather. Corn by Lethbridge is doing really good this week. Huge amount of growth this week. It is really responding well to the heat and the sun, although there's not quite so much sun this morning. We're pretty cloudy. When you section off the stem now, you can see the nodes are starting to separate off from the crown there. So there's one node, 2, 3, and then there's a stack of about 4 here, and then the tassel was right here, although that fell off before I started recording. So the tassel's still very, very small, undeveloped, so we're still a little ways away from seeing that coming out, but yeah, overall looking pretty good right now. Well, here you can see we have a bit of a wavy treatment line right through the middle of this irrigated field of barley here, and this is where Modus was applied. This is the check strip this was applied. You can see that there's a good 4-inch height difference on the applied versus the unapplied, so that's looking very promising for right now. If the farmer is unlucky, and we are lucky, we will have this show some severe lodging, and this not so much, but we'll see what happens. Ideally, nothing happens. Here by McGrath at the edge of this winter wheat field where we had really high grasshopper pressure last week, it's pretty much all quiet and silent in here now. Ground here is just littered with dead hoppers. There's one there, there's a couple there, one right here, looks like another one right there, one stuck in a spider web over here. So definitely the Coragen is doing its job of taking care of them as they move into the field from the ditch, so that is wonderful to see. Well, here by McGrath, these lentils are starting to look really good. They've gotten a little bit taller, they're filling in better, they're flowering pretty well. You can see they are just starting to set pods, which is absolutely great. Now, we did have to spray this corner of the field with Coragen because pretty much really heavy grasshopper pressure on the headlands. We wanted to keep them from moving into the field. Grasshoppers really love feeding on lentil pods. Here you can see a grasshopper that has definitely fed on the Coragen, so he's behaving a little drunk. He's not normal. He will probably die fairly shortly here. There is quite a few others on the ground. Here along the edge of this canola field, the grasshoppers are very alive and well, doing well. They are rapidly stripping down this burdock at an unreal pace. They are just going to town on this stuff, And look at that, while I'm here, there's a bird nest in this burdock. So look at that. Burdock does provide a essential piece of habitat apparently for whatever bird species that is. This field of 45 M35 down by McGrath is sure a showy looking canola field. This is a dryland field, and this canola has just grown like crazy, partially due to being seeded into liquid hog manure early this season. So in some spots now, this is hitting 5.5 feet tall or so. It's pretty much up to my shoulders in this spot here, where you can see my truck or a little bit of it. So good thing Kirsten didn't come out here to sweep it, because it's as tall as she is. Here is a good representation of the power of some of our pre-burn products now. So this is lentils on both sides of the road. This was originally supposed to be seeded to barley, but due to a problem with seeding, it ended up going into lentils. So this side of the lentil field was applied with Focus pre-seed, actually in the fall before. And you can see overall pretty clean. There's the odd canola plant over there. There's a couple wild oats, a couple lamb's quarters. Didn't have to do in-crop herbicide. On this side here, you can see it is just absolutely loaded with lamb's quarters and pigweed, and yeah, quite the dramatic difference from one side to the other. Well, there's been lots of dramatic pictures on Twitter and elsewhere about some of the flowering problems in canola, and as you can see in this canola here on the main stem, we have some pretty heavy flower loss down at the bottom with basically no pods set. Same thing on this side stem here, and you can see unusual bud formation down here, and that is pretty much consistent with what we're seeing. Some fields are worse than others. This field overall is not too bad. There's quite a lot of pods being set, but there is also quite a few blanks on some of the stems here. So the actual explanation for it now, according to the Canola Council, is basically what we're seeing is a weather-induced hormone problem. So the cool wet weather in June has basically caused flower buds to develop abnormally, and some of them, as you'll see in some of these pictures I'm going to put here, are quite unusual indeed, and actually remind a guy quite a lot of Aster yellows infection, which is another potential culprit. However, usually Aster yellows does not affect things field wide, but could still potentially be leading to some of the symptoms we're seeing. So we'll know more in the next week or two as those tests develop. This particular field is certainly one of the worst I've seen this week. It has just started to flower, and it's basically at 100% flower loss so far. You're pretty hard pressed to even find a pod. You can see that terminal end there, that flower head completely failed before a bud even opened. The one on the left is malformed, and all the little side branches that are forming, some of them look okay, but some like that one are pretty twisted up and do not look normal at all. These new little guys that are forming, some of them are pretty odd looking. They look a lot like Aster yellows to me, but we'll see what develops over the next week. In the still image here, you can see just how many have aborted on that flower head and the strange shape of it there. More side branches aborting there. And this one you can see is a complete failure as well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next week in this field. And that'll be it for this week. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.